Hello friends, good afternoon and welcome to the EduSat Network. Our topic of discussion today will be the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and for this lecture we have with us in our studio our subject expert Dr. Rajan Kumar, Assistant Professor, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. With this very brief introduction, I'd like to welcome sir to our studio. Thank you for coming.
Thank you friends. So we'll be talking about Shanghai Cooperation Organization today. We have been talking a lot about this bilateral cooperation between various countries. But today I thought that it's better that we move to multilateral organizations, and in that series today the topic is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So I'll tell you the objectives, what are the objectives and methods of this to understand the multilateral organization like Shanghai Cooperation Organization. First objective is to assess the nature of the SCO. Second is to define and understand the Chinese multilateralism. Third is to scrutinize the motives of main actors. There is China and Russia and Central Asian states. And then I'll also try to examine how the multilateralism of Shanghai Cooperation Organization is anti-US. The method that I'll be using to explain this is historical and process tracing. And here, why is this organization important? This organization is important because India is trying to become the member of this organization. And this organization is emerging as a very powerful counterbalance to the NATO. This is also known as the NATO of the East. And recently, India was initially reluctant to become the member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but recently India applied for the formal membership. And this was very recently. It was done by Sushma Swaraj, the Minister of External Affairs. It was done in September 2014. And but before I go into the details of the geopolitics of this organization and various the structure and the organizational processes which are involved in this organization, I would like to tell you that Shanghai Cooperation Organization is basically a Eurasian organization, and the members of this organization are: one is Russia, second is China, third is Kazakhstan, fourth is Kyrgyzstan, then you have Tajikistan, and finally Uzbekistan. So there are 6 members, 4 Central Asian states and 2 other important states like Russia and China. And as the name tells you, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is the name starts with Shanghai, which means basically this is one of the organizations that started by China. So if you analyze the Chinese policy in the last few years, so Chinese policy is moving from bilateralism to multilateralism, or you can say that apart from bilateral policies that China has towards various countries, China is also trying to evolve a multilateral policy where it would like to engage not just bilaterally with other states, but also it would like to engage through multilateral mechanism. In the process, I'll also define what the multilateralism is. And there's a general confusion among the students, and they confuse multilateralism with multipolarity. So I think I'll explain you the difference between multipolarity and multilateralism in terms of the theories of international politics. But what I'm trying to tell you is that Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a new organization which was started in 2001. It evolved from Shanghai 5. Shanghai 5 was created in 1996, and in 2001 this organization, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, that became a full-fledged organization. So it's a very new organization in comparison to other organizations that like European Union or ASEAN and other organizations. And one of the basic motives, or one of the basic difference is that this organization is being backed by countries like China and Russia. And initially it started as a security organization, but gradually it encompassed other issues like economic issues and social issues and the issues of environment and other non-traditional issues. What I'll try to explain today is that I'll explain you what are the basic, how do you understand multilateralism, and also, as I told you, the difference between multilateralism and multipolarity. Sometimes people confuse multilateralism with multipolarity, but multilateralism can be defined as a common strategy of several states for excuse me. Can be defined as it can be defined as a common strategy of several states for economic development in the era of global interdependence. And the liberals, they try to explain it in terms of this economic cooperation, while the constructivists, they would like to explain in terms of the rules and norms, the cooperative creation of the rules and norms as a guide to state behavior is a cognitive and adaptive process. A realist, on the other hand, would like to explain it as nothing but a collective strategy to enhance capabilities in international hierarchy to balance against the hegemonic power. It caters to the national interest. And the famous liberal scholar Robert Cohen, he has explained it in terms of practice of coordinating national policies in groups of 3 or more states through ad hoc arrangement or by means of institutions. So these are broadly the 3 theoretical ways to understand multilateralism. But when you talk of multipolarity is understood in terms of the multiple poles of power that you have. US is the most powerful country, as you know, but many of the countries would like to become the power, and Russia, for instance, would like to become or would like to restore the power that Soviet Union had at one point of time. Similarly, they would like to create a multipolar structure where the power is not concentrated in just one place, which is United States, but there is a multipolar kind of situation where there are different poles or different powerful countries, and the balance of power is distributed equally among the various powers that you have. So that's the difference between multilateralism and multipolarity. Multilateralism basically refers to the coordination of economic and other policies among minimum 3 states, while multipolarity would refer to an international system where there are several powerful states. There are multiple countries which are powerful. So these are the basic differences between multilateralism and multipolarity. Also, there is a theoretical difference, because if you know of international politics and the way it is understood, so realists would like to focus on the power, the balance of power, and they consider that power is one thing which defines international politics. But for the liberal scholars, it's not the power, but the rules and norms or the trade and economic cooperation which decide the economic cooperation. So, for liberal scholars, this multilateralism is basically a means to coordinate the foreign policy of minimum 3 states. When you have 2 states, it's bilateralism, but when you have more than two states, it's multilateralism. And what are the examples of multilateral organizations? One of the best examples given today is the example of European Union, where the European states, they decided to coordinate their foreign policy, and they also, as you know, that they also created a parliament, and there is a free visa regime. They also have a currency called euro, which is applicable to all the countries. So these are the methods through which these states, the states, they try to coordinate or cooperate in terms of economic cooperation, or they also try to create a kind of supranational structure which would coordinate the policies of these states. Another example of multilateralism is ASEAN. This is the organization in the Southeast Asian states where the ASEAN basically coordinates the trade policies or the visa policies or the economic cooperation, the custom duty, tariff, etc. of the member states. And most of the Southeast Asian states are the member of this ASEAN, and basically that's a mechanism of creating an institution through which they would like to cooperate in terms of foreign policy that involves trade and economic cooperation, but they also create certain norms and regimes in the international system. So you can understand a multilateral organization in terms of institutions, that what is the new institution which has been created, and you can also understand multilateral organization in terms of the cooperation or the creation of norms and the certain values which are created through through these organizations. But the realist scholars of international politics, they would like to understand these organizations through this. They consider these organizations as something as an adjunct to the basic motive of creating a new balance of power, or basically these organizations, according to them, are created to serve them to enhance the national interest. So for the realist scholars, the national interest is important, and these organizations are nothing but a method to promote the national interest in a different way. Through these institutions, they promote the national interest. So that's the basic understanding of multilateralism. Now, the important thing here to understand, because we are talking about Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So what is the basic purpose of China? Because China is the prime mover behind this organization, and China is the country which has been promoting multilateralism through Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and also through BRICS. In one of the previous lectures, I have discussed about the BRICS, and we have seen that how through BRICS, China is trying to promote multilateralism. If you see the history of Chinese multilateralism, Chinese multilateralism is a very new phenomenon. In the 1980s or 1990s, China was not a member of many of the multilateral organizations, and China preferred to deal bilaterally rather than multilaterally. But if you see today, in today's context, China is not just dealing bilaterally with other countries, although bilateralism is still the preferred mechanism of dealing with other states, especially the powerful states. But China is also promoting multilateralism in today's context. And I gave you the example of BRICS. China is also the member of this WTO. China is promoting multilateralism in the neighboring states through Shanghai Cooperation Organization on the western side, and on the eastern side, China is also trying to have a free trade agreement with the ASEAN countries. So these are the mechanisms through which basically show that China is trying to promote multilateralism in today's context. So that was the basic, that is one thing that I would like to highlight, and I would like you to understand that multilateralism is a new phenomenon in the Chinese context, but China appears to be quite committed to multilateralism. And of course, as the realist would argue that these multilateral organizations are not just for creation of certain norms or just for the economic purposes, it also serves a realist purpose. For instance, through Shanghai Cooperation Organization, China is also trying to create a new balance in the Central Asian states. The Central Asian states, as you know, that after the breakup of the Soviet Union, these states gradually came under the influence of the Western states, especially the United States. Gradually, if you see the geopolitics of the Central Asian states, the states like Russia, United States, and China, and these are the major powers which are fighting for influence in the region. That region of Central Asia is very important for strategic reasons, and also because of the hydrocarbon resources that these states has. Turkmenistan, as you know, that is one of the major producer and supplier of gas. Similarly, Kazakhstan has huge oil resources. So for those reasons, these states become important for United States. For Russia, this is important because not just because of the hydrocarbon resources, but also because and China and Russia, these states are important also because there's a gas pipeline. The gas pipeline for Russia, most of the gas pipeline during the Soviet period from Central Asia, they were coming through Central Asian states, and then the gas went to Russia first, and then it used to travel to Europe. So that is a pipeline, and Russia would still like to control the pipeline which originates in the Central Asian states and that passes through Russia and reaches to Europe. But now gradually what is happening, that United States was trying to create an alternative Caspian pipeline and create a pipeline through the Caspian Sea which went to Turkey and from Turkey to Europe. So US was trying to create an alternative pipeline That was one of the reasons that US was interested in the Central Asian states. But apart from that, US was also interested because geopolitically these regions are important, because they are the neighboring states of Afghanistan. Afghanistan, as you know, is very crucial for the United States, and US Army is present in Afghanistan even today. So because of that reason, the Central Asian states are very, very important. Tajikistan is the bordering state of Afghanistan, and Tajik forces, when some of the Tajik forces in Afghanistan, they were fighting against the so-called Northern Alliance, which is fighting against Taliban. So they were also supported by United States. So because of that reason, the security reason, and because of the geopolitical reasons, and because of the Russia as a factor, these states are very important. And on the other side also, because Iran is an important state, so Iran would also like to create a zone of influence in the Central Asian states, and the Iranian language is very similar to the Tajik language, and they can actually, the Tajik people can understand the Iranian language, and the Iranian can also understand the Tajik language. So there are ethnic factors, there are linguistic factors, and there are security and other factors, as I told you. So because of those factors, Central Asian states become very important for the major powers like United States, Russia, and China. And what China has been trying to do, that China is again China has borders with Kazakhstan. And one of the issues which emerged immediately after the disintegration of the Soviet Union was the issue of border, because the borders were not very well defined, and because of those factors, the borders. But China would like to delineate. China would like to clarify the border with the Central Asian states, and for that reason, it became important for China that Central Asian states. There should be no border conflict between the Central Asia and China. So one of the reasons why Shanghai 5 emerged in 1996, or why China wanted to create a kind of organization, was basically, first it wanted to deal with the border issues and the border dispute. China basically wanted to solve the border disputes with these states. So they created Shanghai 5, and that was the basic purpose, and that's the reason. Many of the people argue that Shanghai Cooperation Organization is basically a security organization. It was the basic purpose, the primary purpose in the first few years was not economic, trade, or other cooperation. The primary purpose was basically to solve the border issues. So that was the main purpose. But gradually, it started covering the other issues like economic cooperation, the military cooperation, and the cooperation environment, other areas. Now, but coming back to the issues of geopolitics, that again, just to extend a little bit the argument, that what are the options for China if it wants to create its zone of influence in Central Asia. So when the aspiring powers like China, they have a few options, and that applies to India also. The first option is that you bandwagon with the superpower, which means that you form an alliance with the superpower. So that's one of the options. And India's policy at the moment is to bandwagon with the superpower. And second option for these countries second option is to hide and wait, as China did in 1980s and 90s. That you wait for the right time to strike, which means that you wait for some time, and when you become powerful, then probably you can be assertive about the policies. The third alternative is that you create an alternative multilateral arrangement, as in the form of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and this is the strategy which is being followed by China at this moment. And the next option is confronting United States. That China will not like to do at this moment, for the simple reason that China is not that powerful, which it's not so powerful that it can confront the United States, and probably that situation emerges later. So when you have the unipolar world, and so there are options for the aspiring powers like China are very limited, and India is also an aspiring power. So India is more like India is closer to United States, and India is more interested in forming an alliance with the United States. But at the same time, India is also trying to create a balance with the emerging geopolitics, where it would like to become the member of BRICS, but it would also like to become the member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, if I have to explain the nature of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, so SCO is an asymmetrical organization in terms of power distribution, unlike the European Union or the ASEAN. As I told you that European Union and the ASEAN, they're also multilateral organizations, but there is some kind of symmetry in terms of ASEAN. If you see the configuration of the states, or if you talk of the power of the states in ASEAN or European Union, so there are many countries which are balancing each other. The many countries which are which are same in terms of power and the population. But in the case of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, that's not the case. Shanghai Cooperation Organization is an asymmetrical kind of organization where you have countries like China and Russia. China is very, very powerful in comparison to country like Kyrgyzstan or country like Tajikistan. China is very populous, as you know, and Chinese population is much more in a number of times larger than the combined population of the rest of the states of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So there is a clear-cut asymmetry in terms of power in Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And the main drivers in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are China and Russia. China is the main driver, followed by Russia, because they wanted to create an organization which will counter the influence of United States in the region. So as a result, they have successfully created Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and here the norms are created by the consensus. If you talk of the ASEAN and if you talk of European Union, many of the norms are created through majority decision. So if the majority decides, so that is applicable. So they can formulate a rule, and that should be applicable to all the member states. But in the case of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, that's not the case here. Here it has to be consensus. Even one state objects to certain norms or the rules, so that will not be applicable in that particular state. So here the method is more voluntary rather than the consensus, rather than the enforceable mechanism that you have in the case of European Union and the ASEAN. And the norms of consensus, voluntarism, and non-interference, these are the norms of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Non-interference means that one state, even the powerful state, will not interfere in the domestic issues of the other state. Or if there are certain norms or the rules which have been accepted by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, first it will not be accepted even if there is one objection, but in no case, no circumstances, a powerful state will try to impose a rule or interfere into the domestic affairs of the state. So why I am stressing this point is because in the case of European Union, there is a mechanism through which European Union can enforce certain rules. If the European Union, the Parliament has decided on certain thing, so those rules can be enforced through so there is enforceable mechanism there. But in the case of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, there is no mechanism which can enforce the rules on the member states. So the rules have to be accepted voluntarily. So these states have to accept voluntarily that whether that rule will apply in that particular state or not. So there is clear-cut differentiation between the domestic policy of these states and the foreign policy. And as I told you that because it evolved gradually from 1996, and then it culminated in a full-fledged multilateral organization. So still in the process of evolving certain norms, and even in the case of European Union, it took number of years and practically a few decades to come to this stage of creating a supranational organization. But the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is an organization created by more or less developing states, where the sovereignty of the state is very, very important, and one state would not like to, would not tolerate interference by the state, because they are very cautious about the autonomy of the state, autonomy of the foreign policy, or autonomy of the sovereignty of the state. So they would not tolerate interference, and as a result, the powerful state will also not interfere into the domestic issues of the other state. So what are the uniting factors, what you call the glue factor within the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? I think one of the most important reasons why these states decided to cooperate is the US threat. Because US is considered to be a threat by most of the states, especially by China and Russia. Recently, you have seen that how a new kind of situation emerged after the crisis in Ukraine, where it almost like it was a revival of the Cold War period, where Russia occupied Crimea when the Ukraine wanted to become the member of the Eastern Partnership Program of the European Union. So that is creating a threat in this region, in the Eurasian region. And China is also, as you know, that China is very suspicious of the US activities in this region, in the Eurasian region and also in the other regions. So US is a uniting factor for all these countries. For Central Asian states, US is considered a threat in other way, because US has been promoting kind of liberal democratic regimes through color revolutions and through the non-governmental organizations, and through promoting values through non-governmental organizations. So but most of the Central Asian states are even now ruled by the semi-authoritarian rulers. So they would not like to have they would not like to have a liberal regime or the regime change in these states. So US is considered a threat even by the Central Asian regimes, and as a result, US threat is a glue factor in creating the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And as a result, these states decided to cooperate and create a new organization through which they can counter the hegemony, or they can counter the influence that US was gradually having in the Central Asian states. Especially because US is having its army in Afghanistan, so Central Asian states become very important for United States. United States also created a base in Kyrgyzstan. The base was Manas base in Kyrgyzstan, because from there it could supply resources to the US forces fighting in Afghanistan. So as a result, Central Asian states are very important for United States. Economically also, these states realize that if they can create an organization through which they can enhance economic cooperation, especially the cross-border trade between China and Central Asian states, and also between Russia and Central Asian states. So the economy was the second uniting factor for the creation of this Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But the most important was security. As I discussed earlier, that security was the most important reason for creation of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And so, what are the security issues? The three major issues are the Islamic fundamentalism, the issue of terrorism, and separatism or secessionism. So these three are the major security issues, because these states are new, and they always fear that the issue of separatism or the issue of secessionism might crop up in one of these states. And in the Osh and the Fergana Valley, they also had the ethnic conflict. Occasionally, they had the ethnic conflicts. So as a result, the security was the major reason why these states decided to come together and create an organization. And also, there are some non-traditional threats. For instance, drug trafficking is a major issue in all these states. The drug from Afghanistan goes to Central Asia, and from there it goes to Russia and the European states. So that has become a drug route. Excuse me. That has become a drug supply route, which starts from Afghanistan and reaches to European states. So these are the major security issues which required these states to cooperate institutionally, so that a new organization can be created. But the focus, the main actor, was of course the China, because the China is the prime mover behind this organization, and Chinese policy, the Chinese foreign policy in the 21st century was shifting from bilateralism to multilateralism. And there are some examples like ACFTA, which is like ASEAN-China Free Trade Agreement, and the second is Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Then China is also the member of ARF of ASEAN. Then China is member of SM, EAS, and APEC states. So China is basically promoting promoting multilateral cooperation through these organizations, through these institutions. And the norms of these Chinese multilateralism is non-interference in domestic affairs, and it is based on the principle of persuasion and peer pressure rather than enforcement. And the policy is of conflict avoidance rather than preventive diplomacy or conflict resolution. Chinese multilateralism is related to bargaining. Is basically it gives a bargaining power to China vis-a-vis the superpower like United States. So it gives more bargaining power to China if China also can create a multilateral organization. And the preferring code of conduct and statements of principle rather than the robust legalized agreement with the enforcement mechanism. It's different from the European model. It does not support any supranational model. It's opportunistic and conditional and selective. It's basically the policy is cooperating to compete rather than racing to integrate. Chinese multilateralism is anti-hegemonistic because this normatively it is trying the Chinese multilateralism is trying to weaken the soft power of the United States that inclines to unilateralism. US the preferred policy of US, if you analyze the geopolitics of, if you understand the international politics of or the foreign policy of United States, the preferred policy of United States is to deal bilaterally. If you want to understand the way the strongest states and the weakest states behave in the international politics, stronger states would like to have bilateral deals with the other states, while the weaker states, because they know that they'll have much more bargaining power with the superpower if they deal through some kind of deal through some kind of organization, or if they deal when they deal through a bloc. When the weaker state, they create a bloc of a number of weaker states, so it gives them much more bargaining power vis-a-vis the superpower. So as a result, the preferred strategy of the stronger state is to have a bilateral policy, while the preferred strategy of the weaker state is to deal through the multilateral organization. And one of the biggest example is the case of India. India, if you see the India vis-a-vis the SAARC organization, multilateral organization that has been created in the South Asia. So India's preferred policy is also to deal bilaterally with these states, while the countries like Sri Lanka or the weaker states like Nepal or Bhutan, they would like to deal with India multilaterally. So that's the preferred policy of the weaker state. So as a result, the US always prefers a bilateral kind of deal with the Central Asian states, and China believes that the US influence of US policy of bilateralism can be countered by creating an organization through which it can have much more bargaining power with the superpower. So that's one of the basic purposes of Chinese multilateralism through Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Central Asia. At the level of power, China's regional multilateral involvement weakens US influence in the region, and it also weakens the alliance system that you have in the Central Asian states. But what is happening, in the case of Central Asia, that there are other weaker states which are also trying to have its influence in the region. The other countries which are also trying to cut the cake or also have a share in the broader cake of Central Asia. These are the states like Turkey, Iran, and India, because Turkey is ethnically Turkey is again related to Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan, and Turkish language is again is very close to Central Asian languages. So Turkey is again one country which would like to have a closer cooperation with, or it would like to have its influence in the Central Asian region, and because of the hydrocarbon resources and also because of other factors that I mentioned earlier. The second country, Iran, Iran is also trying to cut its deal with the Central Asian state, and Iran, because it gives access to hydrocarbon resources, it gives access to Russia, and through Russia to European states. So Iran is also interested in the Central Asian states. So Iran is the second country which is interested in having its influence in the region. Pakistan is another state which is again because of the religious factor. Pakistan thinks that most of the Central Asian states are the Muslim states. So Pakistan would like to have a closer cooperation with the Central Asian states. But religion is not a very important factor even in Central Asia, partly because of the Soviet rule. In the Soviet period, the influence of religion was minimized, and as a result, these states became the secular states. Although the influence of religion is growing in the Central Asian states, but Pakistan is trying to have a closer cooperation with the Central Asian states. India, fortunately, India historically India had a very good cooperation with the Central Asian states, and historically, as you know, that the Babur, the Mughal ruler who founded the Mughal Empire in India. So Babur came from Uzbekistan, and even if you go to Uzbekistan today, you'll find that the Babur is a very popular name in Uzbekistan, and the Uzbek people, they think that their empire, the famous Mughal Empire, actually started from Fargana Valley in Uzbekistan, and from there, Samarkand, Bukhara, these were the famous places. Historically, these are the famous places, and they're still there. And from there, Babur started coming towards the eastern side. They came to Afghanistan, and from Afghanistan, they came to India. So they established the empire. So they historically there is also a trade link between the Central Asian states and India through Afghanistan and Pakistan. So we have a bonding with the Central Asian states historically. So India is trying to have a very closer cooperation with Central Asian states. For India, Turkmenistan is important because Turkmenistan has a gas, is one of the major supplier of gas in the world. So Turkmenistan, the Tapi pipeline, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, the Tapi pipeline, which was promoted by United States and as an alternative to Iran-India pipeline. So that pipeline basically was planned to originate from Turkmenistan and come to India. Finally, the status of Tapi is not very clear even now, and it seems that Tapi, because of the Pakistan factor and the internal turmoil which is there in Pakistan, the Tapi is in doldrums. The status of Tapi is not clear. But Turkmenistan gas is very important, and the gas can come through the ocean route if the pipeline is not happening. So even the ocean route is the preferred route. So because of that, it's important. Tajikistan is very close to India because of the historical reasons, and also because of the Soviet reasons, when Dushanbe was one of the major links between India and Soviet Union. And Kazakhstan is important for India because of oil factor. Kazakhstan has oil, and if India can get access to one of the oil projects in Kazakhstan, so that will be very important. Then again, Kazakhstan has uranium, and since India is heavily planning to have nuclear energy plants, India is having a deal with the United States to develop the nuclear plants, and also India had deal with Japan. India had deal with France and other countries, Australia. But some of the countries from where the uranium supplies can come, Kazakhstan is one of the important supplier of uranium for India. For those the nuclear power plants, the supply of uranium, the few countries which have agreed to supply, one is Kazakhstan, second is Canada, Australia has also agreed. So these are the major sources of acquiring energy. But because of uranium factor, Kazakhstan is also important. And of course, India is also interested in the hydrocarbon resources which are there in Kazakhstan. So another factor which is very important for India is Afghan factor. In Afghanistan, India has invested heavily in the last 1 decade, and India has invested nearly $2 billion, and slightly more than that, $2 billion in infrastructure development in Afghanistan. And India would like to have a closer relationship with the Central Asian states, and because through Central Asian states, India can also influence Afghanistan, and India is also trying to develop the road link from Chabahar port in Iran, from there to Central Asia, and then from there to Russia and Europe. So sometimes it's also referred to as the North-South corridor, and in that North-South corridor, the transport route, Central Asian states figure very prominently. So because of the Afghan factor, because of the transport factor, because of the trade, because of the hydrocarbon resources, and because of the security reasons, these states are very important. And that's the reason India has gradually come to terms with joining Shanghai Cooperation Organization. When Shanghai Cooperation Organization was being started in 2001, India was offered the membership, but India decided not to become the member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization at that point of time. But now India has decided that India will become the member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and as I told you that India has formally applied to become a member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now I'll show you the slide. If you can have a look here, the Chinese motives. What are the Chinese motives? Now I'm going to the motives of various actors in Shanghai Cooperation Organization. I discussed the motives of India, Iran, Turkey, but coming back to the prime actors. So for China, security is the major factor. For security, Islamism is a factor because there is a growing influence of Islam in Central Asia, and China has a territory which is very troublesome, the Xinjiang province of China, and that's where the influence of Islam is growing, and separatism is a factor. So because of that, security is an issue, and Islamism is a factor for China in Central Asia. The issue of terrorism is also a factor because Central Asian states are bordering states. So the issue of terrorism might influence the region of Xinjiang province of China. Economically, as I told you, that economically these states are very important for China. China has also got contract of oil in Kazakhstan. They have also established pipeline from Kazakhstan, and China has also established pipeline with Turkmenistan, direct supply of gas from Turkmenistan to China. So for economic reasons, the procuring gas and oil, that's one of the important factors. China is also interested in establishing a possible free trade area between Central Asia and China, although that is opposed by Russia, because Russia would like to have its own economic union. So Russia is not supportive of free trade area, and many of the Central Asian states, because they're very small and the weak states, so they also fear growing influence of China in the Central Asian region. But that's one of the reasons why China is interested in creating this free trade area between Central Asian states and China. And third, as I told you, is the counting US. US is one factor which is again a kind of bringing the states of Central Asia and China together. So these are the major reasons why China is interested in Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now coming to the, if I can show you the slide, the Russian motives in Shanghai Cooperation Organization. For Russia also, the security is one of the important factors. For security, in the security, the same issue of secessionism and the separatist threat, the growing Islamic influence, and drug issue, and another factor which is important for Russia is the Russian minority which are there in Central Asia. As you know that in Kazakhstan, nearly 20% of the Russian minority live in Kazakhstan. So because of that, this security is an important issue for Russia in Central Asia. In case there is some trouble or ethnic conflict in Central Asian states, so that is directly going to influence Russia and its stability. So as a result, this minority factor and the issue of Islamic threat or the separatist threat, that will have an impact on the stability of Russia. Second, the economic factor, because most of the pipelines, the gas and the oil pipeline of Central Asia, they pass through Russia and then they go to Europe. So as a result, economically, these states are very, very important. And Russia is also interested in creating the Eurasian Economic Union. The Eurasian Economic Union, basically it includes countries like Belarus, Kazakhstan, Russia, Tajikistan. Uzbekistan initially joined, but Uzbekistan left after some time. So the Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Belarus, and Armenia. So these are the major states which are interested in the Eurasian Economic Union. Basically is a union which basically seeks to have some kind of free trade or the very standard custom and the tariff duty. So there will be a free movement of people and the goods from one part to the other. So Russia is interested in creating a Eurasian Economic Union, while China is interested in its own free trade with the Central Asian states. So that is one of the issues of conflict between Russia and China. Russia is interested in Eurasian Economic Union, while China is interested in the free trade with the Central Asian states. Countering US is again one of the major motives of Russia, because the presence of US in Central Asia is a threat to Russia. So as a result, Russia would like to counter the growing influence of US in the Central Asian states, and Russia is also scared of having the color revolution. As you know that many of the states underwent this color revolutions. Even in Central Asia, there is a tulip revolution which happened in which happened in Kyrgyzstan. So because of that, that created a fear among the Central Asian leadership. That also created a fear among the Russian leadership. So so Russia is basically trying to counter. Russia is basically trying to counter the USA through Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and in 2005, Shanghai Cooperation Organization urged United States to withdraw from its military base that it had created in Central Asia. Russia is critical of the regime change and the color revolution which are promoted by the United States and the Western countries. In February 2009, Kyrgyz Parliament terminated 2001 treaty on US airbase in Manas, and it clearly said that the Manas airbase, which was given to United States in 2001 after this US intervention in Afghanistan. So they said that the US should withdraw from Manas airbase. So that was basically one of the reasons why Shanghai Cooperation Organization also took up the case under the Russian and the Chinese pressure to basically send a message to United States that United States cannot have a base in Central Asian states. And Shanghai Cooperation Organization is one of the mechanisms through which collectively they can argue that US should not have a base in the Central Asian states. Medvedev, the president of Russia, the previous president, ex-president of Russia, noted that no amount of bases would help to fight terrorism, and that was one of the reasons why the US decided to withdraw from the Manas airbase in Kyrgyzstan. And Shanghai Cooperation Organization (SCO) also asked United States that SCO should play a role in the settlement of Afghan issues. And finally, the NATO and the United States, they realized that SCO is an important player for stability in Afghanistan. They created the SCO Afghanistan Action Plan, which called for joint operations in combating terrorism, drug trafficking, and organized crime. It also appealed for granting Shanghai Cooperation Organization membership to Afghanistan. At the moment, Afghanistan has just an observer status like India. It's not a full-fledged member, but some of the states which are competing to become the member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, these states are Iran, India, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Pakistan is also, Pakistan because of Chinese support. So Pakistan wants to become the member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and one of the reasons why the membership of India it was not coming very easily was also because China and many states argued that if India can become a member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, then Pakistan should also become the member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And Moscow Conference of 2009 reiterated SCO's position of expansion of US military in Central Asia, but it was at the same time willing to cooperate with NATO. So that was the balance which it was trying to create through the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Conflict of interest within Shanghai Cooperation Organization, because as I told you that rising China is a concern for Russia and Central Asia. China is a threat for not just for India, but China is also considered growing. China is a threat for Russia because Russia has borders with China, and Russia also fears that the Chinese population are migrating in Siberian part of Russia, and if China becomes very, very powerful militarily and economically, so that would create a threat for Russia in the region. So that's an issue of conflict between the member states. The second issue is that Russia and China, they are still trying to deal with through bilateral mechanism rather than a multilateral mechanism. So they give primacy to bilateralism rather than multilateralism. So that's an issue of conflict, because if you have a multilateral organization, you should try to solve the problem multilaterally rather than bilaterally. So that's one of the issues of conflict between the member states. And the example was Russia created this CSTO, which is Collective Security Treaty Organization. This was a mutual defense agreement between three states, Belarus, Kazakhstan and Russia. So that was an alternative military defense alliance which was created by Russia. So people argue, the critics argue, that if you already have Shanghai Cooperation Organization, then what is the need of an organization, the defense alliance like CSTO? Russia, economically, Russia, as I told you, Russia has also formed Eurasian Economic Union. So that is again in conflict with the broader economic collaboration that should have happened through Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So that's another area of conflict which you can see between Eurasian state and between Russia and the Chinese and China. China is more concerned about stability in Xinjiang province, while for Russia the issue in the Central Asia, there are three major issues for Russia and Central Asia. One is the issue of minority, second is the drug trafficking, third is the ethnic conflict that you have in Central Asian states. So Russia thinks that because of these issues, the stability of Russia can be an issue in the future. Drug trafficking is a major issue because many of the younger people are getting addicted to drugs in Russia, and since the supply is coming through Central Asia and originates from Afghanistan, so Russia is more concerned about the drug trafficking, and Russia is more concerned about the US presence in Central Asia. But for China, the Xinjiang and the influence of Central Asian terrorism or Islamic factor in the Xinjiang province. So that's the major concern of China in the Central Asian states. Moscow does not support Chinese proposal of an SCO, a free trade area. Wen Jiabao, who was the premier of China, he in 2003 gave the idea of free trade between among the Shanghai Cooperation Organization states. But Russia prefers the Eurasian Economic Union, which includes Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Belarus. So that's another issue of conflict that you see between Russia and between the member states. Russia failed to mobilize Shanghai Cooperation Organization states for recognizing independence of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, while China succeeded in getting support on Xinjiang province on the western front. In fact, what Russia wanted when the Georgian conflict was taking place, the conflict in Georgia was taking place in 2008. So Abkhazia and the South Ossetia, which declared the two regions of Georgia, they declared independence. Russia wanted China and the other member states to recognize the independence of these two states, but Shanghai Cooperation Organization collectively it did not support the Russian idea of recognizing the independence of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Similarly, when Crimea was annexed by Russia after the conflict in Ukraine in 2015, that was not supported by all the member states collectively through Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The statement given by Shanghai Cooperation Organization was that the Western countries and United States should not try to influence the policies in Ukraine, and it also accepted that Russia has a legitimate interest in Ukraine. But at the same time, the annexation of Crimea, which took place just after the conflict in Ukraine by Russia, so that annexation by Russia was not openly supported by Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So these are the issues which I wanted to discuss about Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Finally, I'm coming to the conclusion. So how do you conclude the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? First, understand that this is one of the organizations, which is this Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a different from ASEAN or European Union. It started with the security cooperation among the member states, especially Russia and China and Central Asian states, but gradually it evolved to cover economic issues and also non-traditional issues like drug trafficking and environmental issues. China is through this China is cooperating to compete rather than racing to integrate. The Russian interests in Central Asia are both political and economic. Russia needs China to counter United States and vice versa. Central Asian states cannot antagonize two powerful neighbors to seek favor from United States. So as a result, Central Asian strategy is to become the member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but at the same time they are also having some kind of cooperation with the Western states. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization is likely to play intensive role in Afghanistan, especially when the US forces withdraw from the region. Due to conflicts of interest within Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it's unlikely to emerge as a mini NATO, which is being argued by the Western critics. So this is not exactly a mini NATO kind of organization. It's more like the internal security organization, which basically caters to the issue of growing Islamic threat, issue of terrorism and separatism. So these are some of the issues which can be solved through Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And India within a year is likely to become the member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. With this, I come to the conclusion of my presentation, and please excuse me for my sore throat today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the presentation. So friends, today we talked about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We shall be back to talk more about similar topics. So friends, with this we take you leave. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.